Let's count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Welcome to part 2 of the small video series delving into the game that would later grow to be Phobia, The Awakening. I am a text-to-speech voice talking as the creator of this game, and I am your guide throughout this series. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the house segment and playtime segment of Brought to Life. There was unfortunately not much else Brought to Life had to offer that was even started. Most of the other content was only written text and ideas. The gameplay of the house levels was mostly finished, though many details were missing. There was no way to access these levels through the hub area, and the player would be locked in the win screen once beating a house level due to there being no way to load back into the hub area. The house levels were rather simple and played out similar to Five Nights at Freddy's 4, where the player was inside their bedroom protecting themselves from monsters that looked similar to the animatronics in the warehouse, but they were not robots. Murray and Jeff came to the doors and had 3 different behaviors. They could be scared off if they were at the end of the hallways with the flashlight, or they could be sent back by closing the door if they were close enough, but if they got too close, using the flashlight on them would make them kill the player instantly, or even within a short amount of time depending on how close they got. When they were closest to the door, the player would have to listen for breathing, just like Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Captain Feathersword had a simple mechanic. All the player needed to do was hold the doors shut to make him move back. Anthony and Greg were special and needed to be reacted to quickly. They would appear in random spots around the house, and the player would need to shine the flashlight at them to scare them off. The jump scares in these levels had to be done differently because of how the player could move from door to door. They still shared the same temporary laughter sound the animatronics did in the warehouse segment. Here is a better look at the 5 characters from the house levels. Mark's fate in Brought to Life was going to be similar to how it was in The Awakening. During the house level's final night, there was plans to add in another character known as Mark's Shadow, though it didn't see the light of day due to issues during development. These issues affected other parts of the game as well, and had something to do with Blender's game engine and how it handles some things. Greg and Anthony could only move when the player was sitting in the bedroom, because they didn't appear when the player wasn't, making it frustrating to deal with them. Since then those issues now have workarounds, and there will be a better explanation about that specific issue in the next episode. There was an older version of the house level that actually had the player walking around a limited space. It was functional for the most part, though all of the programming had sadly been deleted. It was arguably better than the newer house levels, but due to issues at the time, there sadly was no way to get it to work right. This specific idea is still being kept in mind for the future, however. Though it'll likely look much different from this one. The playtime segment of Brought to Life was going to be free roam, and each level would take place in a different location. These levels were highly unfinished, and the first level was the only one that ever got started. There were no sounds yet, either. The goal was simple. The player needed to find the 5 dolls and bring them back to the box. In each level, they would have to avoid one character from the band. The first level was Murray, then there was Jeff, then Anthony, and finally, Greg. Murray did have some AI done for him, though it was only a test and he no longer has it in this footage. He would roam around and chase the player down. The main issue with free roam games I make in Blender is AI. Blender's pathfinding system is very strange and doesn't seem to work well for me, so I usually end up making AI that tends to get stuck, which can be pretty sad in some ways. This is one reason why these levels didn't get too far. Here is some footage of an older yet arguably better version of the first playtime level. The player would be stationary and the goal was to find the doll while defending themselves from Murray. Again, this one didn't get too far. There would be multiple rounds as well, with each one getting harder. From February 2020 to July 2020, Brought to Life had a frustrating development. All of the issues I had stumbled on that made things harder, the high-quality models slowing the game down drastically, and having put way too much on my plate before finishing up a good amount of other things, it was obvious to me that Brought to Life was a mess. One I likely won't get back on track with. Ultimately, Brought to Life was cancelled, and while one may think I would be relieved of the stress, I wasn't. I felt very down doing so, even though the game was never going to be released to the public. It was a passion project that I really wanted to make. I decided that I'll start over later someday, and that ride is a story for another time. That's it for this episode and pretty much all of Brought to Life. The game had a long and stressful development, though there were plenty of great memories that were made on the way. Brought to Life will likely never be released for obvious reasons, but I'm glad to have shown what Phobia, the Awakening once was. The next and final episode will go into detail about the Awakening's development, the fixing of Brought to Life's warehouse levels, and how much I went on and off its development to work on other ideas.
Okay.